What would you say to those who are just kind of overly critiquing the film at this point? You've worked so hard on it. All right. Congrats, Rachel.
Megyn Kelly is absolutely torching Rachel Zegler, and honestly, it's not hard to see why. The Snow White reboot has spiraled into a complete PR disaster, and Zegler's comments about the original 1937 classic have only poured gasoline on the fire.
Oh my gosh, I saw well, we didn't even see, but I saw the logo and I went, that's my name, Snow White's up there, and I cried my eyes out.
Fans are outraged, Disney's scrambling, and Kelly isn't holding back. From disrespecting the beloved source material to alienating die-hard Disney fans, Zegler's handling of this project is nothing short of a masterclass in how not to win over an audience. And now, Kelly stepped into the ring and she's not pulling punches. Rachel Zegler's version of Snow White was supposed to be Disney's next big live-action hit. Instead, it's turned into an avalanche of controversy, and Megyn Kelly is calling it out for what it is, a total disaster. But how did things go so horribly wrong? Let's rewind. When Disney first announced a live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, fans were cautiously optimistic. Sure, Disney's live-action remakes have been hit or miss, but this was Snow White, a cornerstone of Disney's legacy. Expectations were high. But then Rachel Zegler, fresh off her West Side Story fame, started talking. And that's where things started to fall apart. Zegler didn't just express excitement for reimagining the character, she openly criticized the original film.
And we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
In an interview that went viral for all the wrong reasons, Zegler said that the 1937 version was dated, and that her version of Snow White would be a leader who wouldn't be saved by a prince.
The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power.
She described the original film as a story about a guy who stalks a girl, which instantly rubbed people the wrong way. Fans felt like she was disrespecting a timeless classic, one that generations of viewers have cherished, and that's exactly where Megyn Kelly enters the chat. Kelly didn't mince words. On her show, she absolutely obliterated Zegler for her condescending attitude toward Disney's audience. Kelly pointed out how absurd it is to take a beloved fairy tale, one that's almost a century old, and act like it's somehow morally corrupt by today's standards. And she didn't stop there. Kelly called out the arrogance in Zegler's approach. Kelly's biggest gripe? Zegler's complete lack of awareness. While promoting the I film, Zegler seemed more interested in bashing the original Snow White than in celebrating its legacy. She talked about rewriting the story to fit modern feminist ideals, but as Kelly pointed out, there's a fine line between updating a classic and outright trashing it. And Kelly's not alone in her outrage. Social media erupted after Zegler's comments went viral. Fans flooded Disney's pages with criticism, accusing the company of destroying another classic in the name of forced modern narratives. When the first behind-the-scenes photos leaked, showing a diverse cast of magical creatures, replacing the iconic Seven Dwarfs, the internet exploded again. Megyn Kelly seized on that moment too, slamming Disney for their inconsistency. She pointed out that Disney is trying so hard to avoid offending one group that they've ended up offending everyone. By sidelining the original dwarfs and replacing them with CGI-enhanced creatures, they alienated fans who loved the original Snow White. And by pushing a narrative that treats the original movie as problematic, they're alienating traditional Disney fans who grew up on the classics. Kelly's frustration is palpable, and honestly, a lot of people agree with her. There's a growing sense that Disney has lost touch with its audience. Kelly argues that by constantly trying to fix beloved stories that were never broken in the first place, Disney is alienating the very people who made them successful. And the numbers back it up. Recent Disney live-action remakes have struggled to meet expectations at the box office. Audiences are tired of being preached to, and they're showing it by staying home. The Little Mermaid remake underperformed despite months of marketing. And now, with Snow White already facing a mountain of backlash, it's looking like Disney's latest gamble might not pay off. But Zegler's missteps go beyond just her comments about the movie. Her attitude in interviews has been another sticking point. Fans have criticized her for sounding ungrateful and dismissive, which has only fueled the backlash. In one viral clip, Zegler laughs about how she only saw Snow White once and didn't really care for it. Cue the internet losing its mind. Megyn Kelly had a field day with that one. On her show, she mocked Ziegler's attitude, asking how someone who doesn't even appreciate the original film could do justice to a character so beloved by millions. Kelly's take? Zegler's attitude is emblematic of a larger problem in Hollywood, one where young actors feel entitled to rewrite beloved stories without respecting the foundation they're built on. But Disney's problems don't end there. Kelly also pointed out the glaring hypocrisy in Disney's approach. While they claim to be all about inclusivity and diversity, they're alienating the very audience that made them a household name. And Kelly didn't hesitate to call out Disney's executives for being more concerned with pushing an agenda than with telling great stories. Fans aren't blind to this either. Many have pointed out that Disney's focus on modernizing classics often feels more like a lecture than entertainment. Audiences don't want to be told how to think. They want to escape into magical worlds where good triumphs over evil. But with Snow White, it feels like Disney is more interested in making a statement than making a great movie, and Kelly hammered that point home. She highlighted how this isn't just about one movie, it's about a pattern where Hollywood takes beloved stories, strips away what made them magical, and replaces them with hollow, agenda-driven narratives. But here's where things take a wild turn. Despite the backlash, Disney seems determined to push forward. They've doubled down on their messaging, insisting that this modern Snow White will resonate with today's audiences. But Kelly, and a growing number of fans, aren't buying it. In fact, the louder Disney pushes, the more resistance they seem to face. Kelly's prediction? This version of Snow White is headed for a box office catastrophe. And honestly, she's probably right. Fans have made it clear they're not interested in a version of Snow White that trashes the original, disrespects the audience, and replaces beloved characters with politically correct placeholders. And here's the kicker. Ziegler's handling of the backlash hasn't helped. Rather than addressing fans' concerns or showing any kind of humility, Zegler has doubled down, dismissing criticism as misogyny and hatred. And that's only widened the gap between her and the audience she's supposed to be winning over. Megyn Kelly nailed it when she said that Hollywood has forgotten a simple truth. Fans don't want to be lectured, they want to be entertained. And when you take a beloved story like Snow White and turn it into a political statement, you're asking for trouble. But maybe the most telling part of all this? Disney's silence. While Zegler continues to make headlines for all the wrong reasons, Disney has been oddly quiet. No major statements, no real effort to course correct. And that silence speaks volumes. Kelly's warning couldn't be clearer. If Disney keeps alienating its core audience, it won't just lose money, it'll lose its magic. And that's a price even Disney might not be able to afford. And now, with the clock ticking down to Snow White's release, one question remains. Can Disney salvage this mess, or is it too late to turn things around? The fans are watching, and if the early reactions are any indication, this might just be Disney's biggest flop yet. But hey, maybe there's still time for a happily ever after. Right? Or maybe not. Because let's be honest, this isn't just about Snow White. This is about a pattern that Disney keeps repeating. They're taking beloved classics, gutting them of everything that made them magical, and replacing them with empty, virtue-signaling narratives that no one asked for. And Megyn Kelly is just one of many voices pointing out the obvious. Fans are tired of it. The problem is that Disney's approach to storytelling has shifted dramatically over the last decade. Instead of focusing on timeless stories with universal themes, they're trying to retrofit classics with modern ideologies that don't resonate with everyone. And the results speak for themselves. Movies like The Little Mermaid and Peter Pan and Wendy haven't just underperformed, they've been met with a collective meh from audiences who feel disconnected from the very stories they once loved. But Snow White is different. This isn't just any Disney movie. This is the movie that started it all. It's the foundation of Disney's empire. And when Rachel Zegler publicly dismissed it as weird and dated, it wasn't just a jab at an old movie. It was a slap in the face to the millions of fans who've cherished that story for generations. Kelly's critique goes deeper than just Zegler's comments, though. She's highlighting a cultural shift in Hollywood where classic stories are no longer treated with reverence. Instead, they're treated as outdated relics that need to be fixed. But here's the thing. Snow White didn't need fixing. It's a timeless tale of good versus evil, love, and resilience. The idea that a modern audience can't appreciate that without a heavy-handed dose of modern ideology is not only insulting, it's wrong, and the numbers back it up. Look at how audiences responded to Top Gun, Maverick. That movie didn't rewrite the original, it honored it. It respected the legacy while adding something fresh. And what happened? It became a massive box office success because it gave audiences what they wanted: nostalgia with heart, not a lecture disguised as entertainment. Disney could have taken that approach with Snow White. They could have updated the visuals, enhanced the story where needed, but kept the heart and soul intact. Instead, they chose to deconstruct it, turning a beloved fairy tale into a morality lesson that no one asked for. And Megyn Kelly's frustration echoes what so many fans are feeling. Disney doesn't seem to care what its audience actually wants anymore. But it gets worse. Zegler's latest comments have only added fuel to the fire. In a recent interview, she doubled down on her criticism, saying that her version of Snow White will be a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a man to save her. Now, that sentiment in itself isn't necessarily a problem. But here's the kicker. Snow White was never about being saved by a prince. It was about kindness, hope, and staying true to oneself in the face of evil. By reducing the original to a damsel in distress narrative, Zegler is misrepresenting the very story she's supposed to be honoring. Kelly pointed this out brilliantly. She noted that Hollywood has a bad habit of projecting modern ideas onto timeless stories without understanding what made those stories resonate in the first place. And in doing so, they alienate the audience they claim to be empowering. Kelly's take? Audiences don't want a woke version of Snow White. They want a version that respects the original while adding something fresh. But instead, they're getting a version that feels more like a lecture than a fairy tale, and the backlash isn't slowing down. Online forums, social media platforms, and YouTube channels are buzzing with criticism. Fans are calling for a boycott, and the sentiment is clear. If Disney doesn't start respecting its audience, people are going to walk away. And that's a risk Disney can't afford to take, especially with streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon offering alternatives that cater to audiences looking for escapism, not activism. Kelly's warning is loud and clear. Disney is playing a dangerous game by alienating its core audience. And while they might think they're catering to a modern crowd, they're forgetting one crucial thing: nostalgia is a powerful force. People don't go to see Disney classics because they want to see them torn apart and rebuilt to fit modern sensibilities. They go because those stories remind them of a simpler time, a time when magic and wonder took center stage. And if Disney forgets that, they're not just risking the success of one movie, they're risking the very foundation that built their empire. But there's still one more twist in this tale. In the latest turn of events, rumors are swirling that Disney execs are panicking. Behind the scenes, internal reports suggest that early test screenings of Snow White have been met with lukewarm responses at best, and outright hostility at worst. If that's true, Disney might be facing a situation where they're too far down the rabbit hole to course correct. Megyn Kelly's prediction might be coming true faster than anyone expected. With Zegler's reputation taking a hit and Disney's brand loyalty eroding, Snow White could end up being the biggest flop Disney's seen in years. And if that happens, it won't just be a financial loss. It'll be a wake-up call that even Disney isn't immune to audience fatigue. But here's the real question. Can Disney pull off a last-minute miracle and turn this ship around? Or is it too late to save Snow White from the avalanche of backlash that's coming its way? One thing's for sure. If Megyn Kelly's right, the real fairy tale here might be Disney thinking they can keep ignoring their audience and still come out on top. Because in the end, no amount of magic can save a story that's forgotten where it came from. And if Disney doesn't start listening to the fans who made them a global powerhouse, they might soon find themselves living a nightmare they can't wake up from. The clock is ticking, and the fate of Snow White hangs in the balance. But hey, maybe there's still a happily ever after hidden somewhere in this mess. Or maybe this is one story that doesn't get a second chance.